This is Jean Wilson. She's one of our regular service customers. Up until now, she's had no problems with service on her 1977 Nova. So she's quite happy and expects no problems today. But today, all of that's going to change. Pro Serv presents Just a Little Misunderstanding. A little misunderstanding. That sounds innocent enough, doesn't it? But I'll guarantee you that misunderstanding is the thing that can cause more problems between a service department and its customers, and more problems within a service department and a dealership than anything I can name, and I ought to know. Frequently, I get to handle the results of a misunderstanding, and some of them can be quite serious. My name is Bill. I'm a service manager, and what I'm talking about is communication. Now, here's a word that has to be one of the most important in the English language. The way we communicate with each other is what makes our world go around. Clean, precise communication is one of the cornerstones of an efficient service operation. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about in this Pro Serv program. Communication, both good and bad, and how communication affects the job you do in your service department. How it affects the department as a whole, and the performance of your dealership as well. Let's start with Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson was in today for lube, oil, and filter maintenance services on her 1977 Chevrolet vehicle. No problem so far. As she left, Mrs. Wilson told the service advisor she'd pick up the car in the late afternoon. No rush. After Mrs. Wilson returned home, she remembered a couple of important things that completely slipped her mind when she was in the service department. First, she forgot to tell the service advisor about that clicking noise in the rear end that she had begun noticing lately. And second, she completely forgot an important PTA conference at her son's school scheduled for 3:30.
Hello, this is Jean Wilson calling. I brought my 1977 Nova in this morning for service, but there's a problem I forgot to tell your service advisor, Don, about. Could I please speak to him?
The operator then put the call on hold and paged the advisor. He didn't answer, and the operator had no idea where he might be. Finally, Mrs. Wilson asked that he be given the following message.
Please fix the clicking noise in the rear end of my car. And could you please tell Don that I must have my car back by 3 p.m.? Thank you.
As you can see, our operator puts Mrs. Wilson's message into shorthand form. Unfortunately, some important information is lost. Don left the dealership but didn't check out or back in and was back for nearly an hour before the operator called with Mrs. Wilson's message. When he returned, the telephone operator relayed Mrs. Wilson's message from her desk pad, fix noise in rear end. However, the clicking noise and the 3 o'clock deadline were not communicated. Our service advisor finds that Mrs. Wilson's car hasn't been started yet since there was no hurry. So he retrieves the RO and writes in, check and repair noise in rear end. Don doesn't feel it's really necessary to call Mrs. Wilson back to discuss the noise problem or to road test the car. After all, he has other work to do, and the technician can probably figure it out faster than he can. Next, our dispatcher decided which technician to assign the job to. But since the shop was pretty full, and since there was no time commitment, he decided to hold off and assign the work at 2 o'clock when he was pretty sure a stall would be open. As you can see, our communications problem is starting to escalate. So our technician gets the repair order and Mrs. Wilson's car. Of course, it doesn't tell him what the noise sounds like, or when the noise occurs, or under what conditions.
What kind of noise was it? They don't tell you nothing.
Yeah, I guess they think we're magicians.
Well, maybe I ought to talk to Don.
Well, that's a lot of trouble. And it just takes more time.
Well, the ring gear's worn a little. I'll put in a new one. Maybe that'll fix the problem.
Now our communications problem is getting into further trouble. Since the problem was never really communicated, the technician thought he knew what was the matter, and he's about to introduce a new facet into the overall communications situation. Let's follow him over to the parts department and see what happens next.
Give me a ring gear for a 77 Nova.
Okay, here you go.
Now we're about to have a new spin-off on our growing communications problem. Mrs. Wilson's car is a Nova with a 305 V8 engine and a 4-speed manual transmission. and it has a 3.08 rear axle. Of course, the 241 axle is base equipment on the automatic. I'll bet you can guess what happens next.
You gave me a ring gear for a 241 rear axle. I need a 308.
Why didn't you tell me you were working on a 4-speed?
Why didn't you ask?
Well, it got to be 3 o'clock pretty fast. Mrs. Wilson came in fully expecting her car to be fixed and ready to go. Of course, that wasn't the case. Let's listen in on her conversation with our service advisor.
Didn't you get my message? What seems to be the problem? I have an important meeting to attend in half an hour.
Yes, I got the message, but it's taking longer to repair than we thought, and I thought...
But my message said that I had to have my car by 3. And why didn't you call me if there was a problem?
And so our customer, Mrs. Wilson, found herself back in the customer lounge having missed her meeting, waiting, annoyed, certainly not very pleased with the dealership. Then, when she finally left for home, can you imagine how she felt when, after missing her meeting and paying a hefty repair charge, she drove away with the same slow clicking sound coming from the rear end of her car? Well, she was back the next day at 8 sharp, no longer the happy, trusting customer, you can be sure. How did this situation all come apart? What went wrong? Where were the communications errors? Let's take a look. And then let's talk about what you should do to make communications work right. Okay? Let's identify each point at which the communications chain broke down. First, the service advisor was gone and couldn't be found. So the operator took the message. But she lost the clicking noise and important time requirement. Second, Don, our advisor, simply translates the switchboard operator's message, fix the noise in the rear end directly to the RO without a follow-up call to Mrs. Wilson and without a road test to clarify the problem, not to mention cost clarification. Third, the dispatcher held up on assigning the job because he wasn't aware of any time requirement. Fourth, our technician didn't ask the advisor for any further information on the problem. Rather, he assumed that a ring gear may be at fault and that a new one would fix that problem. Fifth, the technician didn't tell the parts man what powertrain he was working with, and in so doing, added an unneeded time and money factor to an already confused situation. Sixth, the parts man didn't ask the technician what engine and transmission he was working with, thereby adding to the problem. Of course, the end result was lost time, lost money, a problem not fixed, and a very unhappy customer. Had our service personnel followed some of the rules of good communication we'll be discussing in the next part of our film, the 3 o'clock time requirement would have been clear. The service advisor would have identified the problem as a clicking sound in the area of the rear left quarter that increases as car accelerates. The dispatcher would thus have known that the car was due at 3 and that the problem was not really a rear end problem, but more than likely a bad wheel bearing, and would have assigned the work accordingly. Also, the technician would have saved time by getting the correct parts if he had clearly communicated the vehicle engine and transmission type. Finally, Mrs. Wilson would not have been so angry had the service advisor closed the loop by calling her back to clarify her needs and discussing the added work. As a matter of fact, this simple action might well have saved the entire situation. Communication. What's it really mean? Well, you can check Webster's and come up with a lot of meanings, but the one that carries the whole idea of communication is this. The word communication implies that a message has been sent and that it has been received and understood. Only then can it be acted upon as intended. A dealership or service department has 2 areas of communication. One is with the customer, the other internal. If the line of good communication is broken in either case, problems occur, and the result is customer dissatisfaction. But it's dissatisfaction that can be prevented by good communication, and it's such communication that is the foundation of good service. Look, for example, at how a single repair order touches nearly everyone in your service department. This is a typical service department communications diagram showing the many interactions that take place when a customer brings a car in for service. On any single job, as many as 8 individuals may be involved, and this does not include personnel in the business office. It's easy to see how any slip in communication can cause major difficulties. Take a closer look. The customer, for instance, will always contact the service advisor, but the customer also may contact the telephone operator, parts personnel, the shop foreman, or service manager, and always the cashier. In turn, as we saw in our example case, the service advisor, dispatcher, technician, and parts people will be in contact with each other on practically every job. There will also be additional contact with the shop foreman and sometimes the service manager. In short, good communication saves time, money, and unnecessary confusion, and helps assure the customer satisfaction we're all working for. So what are some of the rules of good communication? Well, first, get it right. Make sure you fully understand the message that's being delivered, whether it's from the customer or from another member of the department or dealership. Our sample case included several areas where various service personnel didn't follow this rule, from the operator through the technician. If you don't understand, ask again. You never have to apologize for asking questions. Had our advisor called Mrs. Wilson to ask again, part or all of the problem could have been avoided. The important thing is understanding. And when you do understand, pass the understanding along so that others will understand also. Be sure they get the same message and the same understanding that you received. In this respect, be explicit. Communications can be either written or verbal, or both. In any case, say or write exactly what you mean. This is no more than passing the message along as you received it. Had the proper communications taken place in our example, and had the technician received a clear, thorough repair order with time requirement, once again, the whole problem may well have been prevented. Also, keep this point in mind. When you're trying to convey a message, a good communication is short, it is simple, it is direct. Adding any unnecessary words, either in writing or verbally, can cause confusion. Be direct. Get straight to the point. Beating around the bush only adds to the confusion. Another point is this: don't assume. Just because something was true yesterday doesn't necessarily mean it's true today. Our service advisor would have had a much happier experience had he checked out Mrs. Wilson's problem and not assumed the technician could handle it without difficulty. In addition, write it down. Don't attempt to keep important messages in your head. Also, always try to be available during the working day. If you must leave your workstation, leave word. Always be sure a key person, like the telephone operator, knows your whereabouts during the business day. Now let's pause for a review of what you've learned. Number 1, in communicating, it's important to say or write as much as possible so there's no misunderstanding. A, true. B, false. Number 2, a good communication is A, short, B, simple, C, direct, D, all three. Number 3, when a person is telling you something, you can save time by A, letting them think you know what they mean, B, asking them to explain again, C, listening, then figuring it out later. Number 4, many people speak in confusing terms, so it's often necessary to read between the lines and assume what they're getting at. A, true, B, false. The answer to number 1 is B, false. Saying or writing too much only leads to confusion. Number 2, D. A good communication is short, simple, and direct. Number 3, B. You save time by asking a person to explain again anything you don't understand. Number 4, B. False. Never assume you understand anything. Always be sure. Our next Pro Serv film will use these communication techniques in a most important area: customer questioning techniques. How to accurately pin down a problem a customer is having with his or her car. Communication. To most people, it simply means speaking and writing. But beyond that, it has to mean understanding. For only when you understand can you build customer satisfaction. For only then can you really answer yes when a customer asks,
Hi, did you get my message? I mean the one about the rear end noise. I left it with your telephone operator this morning.
You are looking at an all-purpose noise machine. Its main function is to separate the hisses, rattles, knocks, and clangs from the clicks, squeaks, clunks, and bangs. In some ways, this machine is like the Chevrolet service advisor who daily must separate the same type noises. However, the service advisor is also expected to locate the source of the noises and act to eliminate them. Separating and locating causes of noises, of course, is just one aspect of the problem-solving job the service advisor is asked to do. The first key step in handling these problem-solving tasks successfully involves customer questioning. This is what we'll be talking about today as Pro Serv presents Customer Questioning Techniques. As a service advisor, you are the important communications link between the customer and the technician. One of your most important keys to success lies in getting the correct information from the customer. Often, to do this, you need to use effective questioning techniques. In today's program, we're going to discuss proper techniques for effective customer questioning. We'll talk about the importance of careful questioning, the need to prepare for questioning, how to use a structured questioning process, and what to do with the answers. Questioning is your key, but before any kind of questioning can be effective, you must first lay the groundwork. In other words, prepare yourself before questioning. Let's see how you can do this. There are 5 things you can do to make any questioning method effective. They are 1. Use the customer service file. 2. Familiarize yourself with the available service literature. 3. Establish effective listening and organizing practices. 4. Develop positive attitudes and statements. And 5. Analyze each situation. Let's look first at the customer service file. This file is important. Use it. It will help you answer some of those questions. It can help you in several ways. First, the file can give you important background information on past repairs. This source would be especially valuable to you in a comeback situation. Second, the car's VIN number, since it will tell you such things as engine displacement, engine type, carburetor type, and the assembly plant, can tip you off to service characteristics unique to a certain vehicle line. Third, the customer service file will help you sell needed service by helping to identify when periodic maintenance is due. Fourth, the customer service file can also provide customer information that will help you talk with him or her on a personal level. This will make the customer feel important and also make your job easier. Another important way of preparing for effective questioning is to familiarize yourself with the available service literature. You might need this information in tough problem-solving situations. Learn to use manuals, bulletins, and the ProTech materials. For information on the purpose and use of various technical aids, consult the ProTech PT3 78-7 on service literature and training. To further prepare for questioning, arm yourself with proper listening and organizing practices. The principles of good listening and organizing were discussed in Basic Customer Relations 1. If you haven't seen this program, you'll want to review it. Good listening and information organizing skills are absolutely essential. Let's see why. In your job as service advisor, you need to collect a lot of valuable information. Know how to listen and organize. When you command the knowledge of effective listening and organizing, the job will be done right in a time-saving manner. For purposes of review, you should keep 3 particular listening and organizing principles in mind when questioning the customer. First, write down as close as possible the customer's description of the problem. Second, concentrate on the important facts. Guard against distraction. Always give the customer your undivided attention. And third, organize the important facts. Don't get carried away with note-taking. Listen and note the key words. The next important pre-questioning consideration concerns attitude. Both you and the customer must think positive if the problem is to be resolved. It's not an easy thing to do. Your customer might have a negative attitude. You must be able to handle customer anger, dissatisfaction, and confusion. These topics were discussed in Basic Customer Relations 2. You'll want to make sure you're familiar with them. You must identify the mood of the customer and work to eliminate any doubt, worry, or fear he or she might have. Show your concern and understanding. Breaking down the negative barriers will encourage the customer to talk and give answers to the questions you're going to ask. Remember to think positive. The problem will be solved. Finally, before any questioning methods can be effective, you should analyze the situation. Each customer problem is different. It doesn't always seem so, but it is. You should sense in each case what key questions to ask. Only consider questions that will get results. Not all situations require thorough questioning methods. Some solutions are easy. For instance, the guy who comes in with a problem you both clearly understand, like a burned-out headlamp or for routine maintenance. However, when diagnosis is required, don't gamble on a solution. A thorough, structured questioning method is necessary to identify the symptoms and the probable cause. Pay particular attention to the customer who has diagnosed their own problem. Work with the problem, not the diagnosis. They could be wrong, and to proceed with their diagnosis may come back to haunt you. Now you're ready for questioning. Keep two more important facts in mind. First, be careful not to use technical language that might confuse the customer. And second, make sure the problem is clear in your mind. If you don't understand what the customer is saying, ask them to repeat themselves. Begin with a series of general background questions like, have you recently had a similar problem? If so, when was it repaired? Or when did you first notice the problem? Answers to these questions will give you information on the repair history of the car. Now you're on your way. Once you've gotten a clear picture of the background of the problem and any related service history of the car, direct your next set of questions at identifying the symptoms. Do you hear something? Do you feel something? Do you smell something? What exactly happens? Now, get specific. Once you have a pretty good idea of the general area causing the problem, ask more direct questions. You want to know when does or doesn't the problem occur, when starting or stopping, at all speeds, under what driving conditions, on certain terrain, with accessories in use, with engine idling, intermittently or at all times. Your next step is to find out where it happens. Under car, under hood, in front or back. At this point, you have more than likely isolated the problem area and the probable cause. Now verify your findings by visually inspecting the problem area, by road testing the car if the problem is difficult to define, or if the problem is still a puzzle, by consulting the available service literature mentioned earlier, or asking for a second opinion from another service advisor, shop foreman, or service manager. To further verify, repeat the customer's description verbally. Then, make sure the repair order clearly defines the situation to avoid possible misunderstanding. We'll be talking in detail about all the correct techniques for repair order completion in a future Pro Serv. Both you and the customer should agree on the problem. Let's take a look at a typical situation. In our example, Mrs. Jones arrived at the dealership complaining of a noise. Service advisor Bob Smith has assured Mrs. Jones that the problem will be corrected, and Mrs. Jones is confident. She has a positive attitude. In preparing for his questioning procedure, Bob has put his job aid card from this program opposite a blank sheet of paper on a clipboard. He wants to make sure he asks the right questions at the right time. Let's pick up their conversation to see how Bob handles the situation.
It just keeps making this strange noise.
Have you ever heard this noise before?
No, it just started.
That's an important clue. If she had heard the noise before and called it to the dealership's attention, Bob would have gone to the customer service file at some point in the questioning to check on previous repair information.
What do you hear?
Well, it's kind of a hissing noise.
Do you notice this noise when you're driving?
Yes, but it seems to be worse, though, when I'm parking or turning.
Do you notice this hissing noise under all driving conditions? That is, on wet or dry pavement, when it's cold or hot, high or low speeds?
It happens all the time, but it's worse when I turn.
How about the direction of the turn? Is it worse when you turn left or right?
Well, it's bad on any turn.
Do you feel anything such as a slight vibration in the steering wheel when this noise occurs?
Oh, yes, I do feel a slight vibration in the steering wheel that wasn't there before.
By using this carefully structured questioning technique, Bob has been able to determine that the cause of Mrs. Jones' problem is probably in the steering. The answers to Bob's questions, a hissing sound, when it's worse, on parking and turns, and the slight vibration in the steering wheel, led him to this conclusion. He must now verify this and pinpoint the probable cause.
Based on the information you've given me, it appears there may be a steering problem. Some hissing is common, like when you're turning the wheels with the car barely moving, as in parking. But a constant hissing just isn't right. Let me start your car and see if we can identify the noise. The slight noise you hear with the steering wheel at full turn is normal. But when I return the wheel towards center, there's still a hiss. That's not normal. I'm going to check out a few things to see if I can get at the cause of the problem. Well, the power steering fluid level is okay. The tension on the power steering belt is right up to standard. What else could it be? Hey, I remember reading in the service manual that a hissing noise could be caused by metal-to-metal contact in the flexible coupling. I'm sure glad those manuals have diagnostic charts. I'll check it out. I think this may be it. Mrs. Smith, that hissing noise you hear could be caused by two pieces of metal making contact when they shouldn't. It could be either a misalignment in the steering column at the flexible coupling or a worn part in the coupling. I'll have the technician check it out.
Note that Bob, on his repair order, has spelled out the 3 C's: complaint, cause, and correction. He's helped to save the technician unnecessary work. Bob has done his job. He has linked the customer with the technician. Service advisor Bob Smith solved his problem. How did he do it? By preparing himself in advance, by asking the questions that would get results, and by knowing what to do with the answers. In getting the job done through an effective questioning procedure, you can zero in on the problem to everyone's satisfaction. You have a satisfied, confident customer because you have helped to solve the problem in the most efficient way possible. You have helped to fix her car right the first time with no comebacks. In short, you have saved her time. Believe me, she's grateful. You have a satisfied technician. You've either diagnosed or helped him to determine the most likely cause of the problem. He can spend his time getting right down to fixing the problem. You have strengthened the market position of your entire dealership. That satisfied customer has faith in your dealership and in your ability to keep her car in running order. That's important to her, and she'll keep coming back. A proper questioning technique will also satisfy you, the service advisor. You will be eliminating the one thing that makes your job so doggone tough, the unhappy customer. Now, let's see if you can answer some questions on the subjects covered in this presentation. Number 1, preparing for effective questioning means A, little or nothing, B, most customer problems can be solved, C, time has been saved, or D, both B and C. Number 2, if a customer is angry, chances are your questions will not get satisfactory answers. A, true, or B, false. The answer to number 1 is D, both B and C. Preparing for effective questioning means that most customer problems can be solved and time has been saved. Number 2 is A, true. If a customer is angry, chances are your questions won't get satisfactory answers. Let's try a couple more. Question number 3. When a customer has done his own diagnosis, you should A, proceed with his diagnosis, B, work with his problem, not his diagnosis, C, make the customer understand you're the expert, not him. Number 4, when questioning the customer, you should choose random questions to cover all areas, A, true, or B, false. The answer to number 3 is B. When a customer has done his own diagnosis, you should work with his problem, not his diagnosis. And number 4, B, false. When questioning the customer, you should begin with general questions and then get more specific. Before we conclude, let's talk for a moment about what's coming up in the next Pro Serv. The subject covered in that program will help you in your questioning procedure. The program will introduce a vehicle diagnostic guide and explain how to use it. The vehicle diagnostic guide will center on the most common vehicle problem areas. The guide will be broken down into descriptions of the various problems related to each area and the probable causes for the problems. It will provide you with a diagnostic communications tool to build a stronger link between your customer and the technician. Watch for it.